Many photographers make the same basic mistake when editing their photos, and it's limiting their results. Let's look at what it is by using this image as an example. Although I'm using Adobe Lightroom for this, the same mistake is easy to make in most popular photo editing packages. Looking at this image, it's easy to question why I shot it. At first glance, it looks too dark and it's dull. But at the time, there was beautiful warm light falling on the trees and the surrounding ground. What's happened is that the camera didn't handle it well, and it's produced a photo that's, well, not very inspiring. I'm sure you'll have had similar experiences yourself. Most photographers' first reaction is probably to delete this. But if you choose not to, you'll probably try making some basic corrections to see if the image works. These adjustments will include things like exposure, contrast, and possibly changes to individual tonal ranges. In Lightroom, these adjustments are all grouped together in the Basic panel, and many other editing packages do something similar. So let's look at what happens when we use these tools to fix this image. I'll start by increasing the exposure because I think the image just looks a bit too dark. That's opened up the shadows now, but not by enough. And if I apply more exposure, the image becomes too light. So instead, let's turn to the shadow slider and increase that. This seems to do the trick, but now the highlights just look too bright against everything else. So let's reduce the highlight slider. This adjustment works, but it now leaves the image looking slightly flat, so let's increase the contrast to fix that. Now, let's compare the image with the original. We can see that the adjustments fixed most of the problems we talked about, but the image doesn't look good, and it seems to have lost something, which is a bit strange for an image that looks like this in the first place. What we've created is a photo that's really something of a compromise. This is because we've used global adjustment controls to fix what are really localized problems in the image. Those global adjustments then had unintended effects on other areas of the image that were really otherwise fine. For example, increasing the exposure slider may have fixed the dark ground, but it made the image highlights in the sky too bright. Then when we used the highlight slider to fix the sky, the bright reflections on the tree were removed. This is what caused it to look flat. These global adjustments are powerful tools, but many images like this one don't require them. They actually require more targeted corrections. It's a bit like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Now you've seen the problem, let's reset the adjustments so we can find a better way. This time, rather than starting with the global adjustments in the Basic panel, I'll start with the local adjustment tools to see if they work better. You'll find local adjustment tools in most raw photo editing applications, and they really are one of the best things to learn. In Lightroom, these are groups under the masking icon. The first area I want to fix is the foreground on the right. Because it's so dark, it's distracting our attention. What we need is to lighten the area where the light is falling without affecting the rest of the image. I can do this in several ways, but the easiest is probably with the simple brush tool. I'll select that and then I'll configure it to have a soft edge so that my adjustments will blend into the rest of the image. I'll also use a lower flow setting than a maximum so that I need to paint over the area with a few brush strokes. This makes it easier to build up the effect and avoid applying too much in one go. By the way, building up effects gradually is one of the best ways to improve the quality of most of your editing. In terms of adjustments, I'll start by applying a strong exposure increase. I'll then use this to paint over the area that I want to lighten. After a few brush strokes, we can see the area is now becoming lighter. I can then increase the white slider to emphasize the light, which makes it brighter still. After that, I can refine any other settings like clarity and contrast to produce the effect I want. Now, a nice feature in some photo editors like Lightroom is this amount slider. I can move it left or right to adjust the strength of the effect without needing to change the individual adjustment sliders. If I now hide and then show this simple adjustment, you can see the improvement it's made to the image. A simple localized adjustment has made the entire image look much better. Now let's fix the tree because it's looking dull against the sky. How you select something like the tree will depend on the tools in your editing software. With Lightroom, it takes a little bit of thought, but I can do it by combining two tools. First, I need to select the sky. I'll then invert that so that everything except the sky is now selected. The next step is to intersect this selection with a second selection of the tree. To create an intersection, I can hold down my Option key or Alt key if you're using a Windows PC. We then see the button change to Intersect. When I click this, I can choose the selection tool to work with from the list. A few of these tools will work, but to keep things simple, I'll just use the brush tool again. Now I only need to paint roughly over the area of the tree that I want to select. But before I start to paint, I'll just increase the exposure. This is going to help me see the effect more clearly than the red Lightroom mask. When I paint, the two selections now combine to produce a new selection. This new selection then only includes the areas where both of the two selections intersect. Now I've selected the tree, I can increase the whites and clarity slider. This helps to emphasize the highlights that were falling on the tree and stops it from looking dull. Now for a final local adjustment, which is to the sky because the contrast in that area is looking too much. I'll click the button to create a new mask and then select the sky from the option. I'm then free to apply my adjustments to the sky. Now, one of my favourite editing adjustment tools is the curve because you can do so much with it. In this example, I'll drag the black point up, which reduces the contrast in the sky. I can then move the highlight slider left to darken the brightest areas of the sky on the horizon. At this point, all I've applied are a few local adjustments, but if we compare this image with the original, it looks much better. With the localized problems now fixed, I can apply my global adjustments, starting with the camera profile. This is what controls how tones and colors are produced from the raw file. For this image, I'll just select the Adobe Landscape profile, which also boosts the saturation. Next, I'll add a soft vignette around the edge of the image. This is to focus more attention on the tree in the center of the frame. It also reduces the brightness in the bottom right corner, which I'm finding a bit distracting. I'll then finish with an adjustment to emphasize the red in the image using the blue saturation slider in the calibration panel. At this point the image looks good, but I haven't touched the global adjustments in the basic panel, and to be honest, I don't think that I need to. When I compare this result to the starting image, it's looking much more like what I remember seeing when I shot it. Now earlier I said that the curves adjustment was one of my favourite tools, but not many people seem to understand how it works. If you want to be one of the few who does, watch this video next. Thanks for watching today, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll see you soon for another video.